Hey guys, welcome to another set review. My name's Parky, and we're just going to be going over the new March of the Machine set that's dropping tomorrow and next week. The way these videos will work is I'll be looking at it in a limited fashion where I'll be ranking cards at each mana cost. So we'll be going through first with white, so let's jump right in. For the white color pairs, we're looking at Azorius is a Night Tribal Flash. We've got Orzhov, which is Phyrexian Tribal, and then we've got Selesnya's +1/+1 counters, and then Boros looks at backup aggro. So you already see a new mechanic in the set that's happening, and we'll get into that once we see it on a card. But lots of fun stuff for this set so far. So first off, we've got Core Halberd, 1 mana artifact equipment. It's equipped to a creature, it gets +1/+1, has vigilance, and only has a equip cost of 1. So pretty basic equipment here. I don't usually play these in limited because it's just too slow for the format. So that's basically it for that. Moving on to Enduring Bond Warden. 1 mana 0/1 creature, human scout. So it has backup 1. So this is our first look at backup. When it ETBs, it puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And if it's another creature, it gets the ability that follows on the card. So for this card, it's when the creature dies, put its counters on target creature you control, which is kind of cool because you can pop that onto another creature, and if it dies that turn, then you can put that counter right on back onto him. So that kind of allows a little bit of flexibility, but I'm not entirely sure how important this is going to be because there's a lot better backup effects. But yeah, I just think this is a decent 1-drop if you need it. Next is Tarkir Toonshaper, a 1 mana 1/2 creature. And it's got Transform, so it's got a cost of Transform, which is 4 and a Phyrexian green. And when this transforms, you're looking at Burnish Dunestomper, so it's a 4/3 trample creature. So honestly, it's a decent body that comes down on turn 1 if you're looking to just kind of put some early damage in, or you want to have a blocker up for 1/1s or whatever, then that's fine. And then you can transform it later, and it's a pretty decent body with trample. So I think this is pretty good value for a 1-drop especially. On to our 2-drops, we have Alabaster Host's Sanctifier, 2 mana, 2/2 creature with lifelink. So pretty standard there, we've seen that a lot. It's good to note that it's a Phyrexian, but that's essentially it for this card. Next is Sunder the Gateway, 2 mana sorcery, choose 1. First one destroys target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, and then you can incubate 2. So incubate is when you create an incubator token, and it gets the number of counters related to the number after incubate, and then you can transform it for 2, and it becomes a Phyrexian artifact creature with that many counters on it. So pretty interesting, and then it does have the second effect where you can incubate 2 and then transform one of your incubator tokens you control. So a little bit of flexibility, but pretty average card at 2. Next is Swordsworn Cavalier, 2 mana 3/1 creature. When another knight enters the battlefield this turn, it gains first strike. So it's going to be good sometimes, it's going to be very average other times, but it's still a decent blocker. It's just going to be able to get blocked by 1-power creatures eventually. So I think that there's a cap on that card, obviously. We've seen cards like this before. Next is Sunblessed Guardian, 2 mana 2/2 creature, and it's got Transform. So this one is 5 and a red Phyrexian mana, and then this transforms into Furnace Blessed Conqueror. So it's a 3/3 creature. Whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Put a +1/+1 counter on that token for each +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then you sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. So pretty interesting here. It almost seems like it reoccurs, but obviously if that creature comes onto the battle, or if the token comes onto the battlefield already attacking, then I'm going to assume that the way it works is it doesn't occur again. So this is a pretty good card. It's got good flexibility with the fact that, you can have a 2/2 on for 2, and then later it's a little bit more relevant. So that seems pretty solid to me. Next is our first look at a battle. So Invasion of Gobakon. I'm going to go with Gobakon. 2 mana with 3 loyalty. I believe they're loyalty. But anyways, so the way that it works is when the Invasion of Gobakon ETBs look at target opponent's hand, and it basically is like a spellbinder, so it makes it cost 2 more for any non-land in their hand. So pretty good for if you want to prevent any curve outs by your opponent and make it impossible for any of their high costing creatures to play for a very long time. So I think that's pretty solid. And then when you do defeat it, the way that these battles work is it gets played on your opponent's side, and they're able to defend it, and you can attack it. So once you defeat it, it turns into Light Shield Array, which is at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. And then you can sacrifice this, and creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So very, very strong. Not very hard to kill the battle, especially considering it comes onto the battlefield so early. And it has a really, really good effect once it transforms. So, or I guess once it exiles and comes back onto your battlefield as an enchantment. So I'm not sure how strong these battles are, but they seem very relevant for the set, and I'm very interested to see how they work. Next is Norn's Inquisitor, 2 mana 1/1 creature. So right off the bat, not a very good rate, but when it ETBs, it incubates for 2. So that's pretty good. You get a 1/1, and then you get a 2/2 if you pay another 2 down the road. So a little bit of value, and then whenever a permanent you control transforms into a Phyrexia, and put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is a really good rate now, because as soon as you transform it the following turn, this then becomes a 2/2, which would be the standard rate for a 2 mana costing creature. So basically what's happening is for 1 card, you're getting a 2/2, and then you also get another body that you just have to drop 2 of spare mana for another 2/2. So really, really good there. I think that's great value. Next, you have Dusk Legion Duelist, which is a 2 mana 2/2 creature with vigilance. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on it, draw a card, and this ability only activates once per turn. So this is kind of similar to the vampire, the 2/3 vampire flyer, that when a creature enters the battlefield for the first time each turn, you get to draw a card. This one I feel like is going to be a little bit harder to activate, but it is also a 2 mana creature. And I like the fact that it has vigilance, because once these counters start building up, this creature will be quite hard to not only block, but attack through too. So I think that's pretty solid. Moving on to our 3 drops, we have another battle, Invasion of Belenon. So 3 mana battle with 5 loyalty, and when it ETBs, create a 2/2 white and blue night creature token with vigilance. So I think it's not so great, because on turn 3 you're going to be wanting to put a relevant body down. A 2/2 for 3 is okay, but then again, how often are you going to hit through 5 onto this battle? And at that point, you might just want to put 5 damage onto them. But when it flips, your creatures do get +1/+1. But honestly, this kind of, I guess, Anthem effect on your creatures, it's okay. But for the 5 cost, you may as well have dealt that 5 damage beforehand. I still think that's a more reasonable way to look at these battles. Is it worth doing the damage to the opponent? Or are you going to basically get a really good effect off of it instead and really secure a win? So it's hard to judge these, but I just don't think this one cuts it. Next is Seraph of New Capenna. So 3 mana 2/2 creature with flying, and then it has transform for 4 and a black Phyrexian mana. And when it does transform, you get Seraph of New Phyrexia, which is a 3/3 flyer. And when it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, then this creature gets +1 or +2/+1 until end of turn. What you're noticing is there's a ton of text on these cards. There is a lot to go through. The battles are extensive. The transform is extensive. You also have the Praetors that have a ton going on, because they turn into an enchantment. We'll get to those as we get there. But this card has a lot of text, but it seems to have a downside to it that doesn't support what it's doing. So you're going to basically be able to attack as a 5/4 flyer occasionally. And I guess that's going to be relevant because it says may sacrifice. So you can just attack as a 3/3 flyer, but you're going to be a 2/2 flyer in the first place. So if you have to pay another 4 and spend a whole turn just to get a 3/3 flyer out and basically get rid of your 2/2, and then you have to sacrifice another creature, it seems like it kind of is slowing you down to the point where you might have to just hold this up as a blocker in the end. So not a big fan of this. Next is Seed Pod Caretaker, 3 mana 2/2 creature. When it ETBs, choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control, or you can transform target incubator token you control. So it has a little bit of flexibility. Again, it's a 3/3 for 3 if you want it to be, or it can help pump other creatures that care about getting +1/+1 counters on it. And then you might even just get a 2/2 and then another 2/2 if you have an incubator token on the battlefield already. So that's a pretty good rate. So I like it. But obviously, I think there are better cards at 3. So next is Sigiled Sentinel, 3 mana 2/2 creature with backup 1 and Vigilance. So when this ETBs, you can put a +1/+1 counter on something and Vigilance for that turn. It keeps the +1/+1 counter, and then it just allows it to attack through and hold up a blocker. So that seems pretty good. And this creature also keeps the Vigilance for the whole time. So pretty cool there for 3 mana. So it's a 3/3 Vigilance essentially if you want it to be. So decent rate. I just don't know how relevant the Vigilance is going to be. I know there is Convoke in the set where you have to tap creatures to play things, so that could be very important. So this could bump it up the list a bit, but I still think that, there's a little bit more room to grow with some of these cards. Next is Phyrexian Pegasus, 3 mana 2/2 flyer creature. So we have when it attacks, another target attacking creature without flying gains flying until end of turn, which is really good. Allows you to get some extra damage through, allows creatures that may not be able to attack through normally to just get evasion, so that's always good. So pretty standard there, to be honest. Next we have Zalfirin Lancer, 3 mana 3/3 creature. Whenever another knight enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 and Vigilance until end of turn. So again, you're seeing a little bit of a trend here, lots of counters, lots of Vigilance, and so you're gonna have a lot of synergy going on here. Actually, sorry, this isn't a counter. This is just a +1/+1, but still lots of synergy. This is a knight also, so decent card. I'm not sure. I might end up just swapping this with the Sigiled Sentinel. The only thing is that would I rather have something that can pump itself up a couple times when multiple knights come into the battlefield? Then sure. On to another battle here, Invasion of Theros, 3 mana with 4 loyalty. When it ETBs, search your library for an aura, god, or demigod card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle. And at first I was like, okay, maybe it's an aura, so how many strong auras do you have in this set? But you do have the new Planar Disrupt that only affects creatures and artifacts. I believe it doesn't do planeswalkers like the previous one. And then black has a pseudo kill spell, or it's got the -4/-4 aura, and then blue has the -X/-0, I believe. So there's some good options for getting auras in other pairs too. And then for gods, we have 3 gods in the set. 2 of them are in white. So is this going to be that great and limited? I don't know, but it seems like it has flexibility where you don't need another god. But if you do, it's going to be really, really good. So this then flips, and that's just the face value. When you defeat it, it flips to Ephra Ever Sheltered. So it's a 4/4 legendary enchantment creature. When it has lifelink and indestructible, as long as you control 3 other enchantments, and then when another enchantment enters the battlefield, you get to draw. So good card draw there. It seems like a pretty solid card for any enchantment deck. I just don't know how many enchantments there are going to be. It seems like there's a decent number, but we'll have to see. So next is Phyrexian Awakening, 3 mana enchantment. When it ETBs, incubate 4. So when you transform it, you get a 4/4 Phyrexian artifact creature. And Phyrexians you control have Vigilance. So again, like I mentioned before, lots of Vigilance in the set. So I could see this being okay. But I'm not sure. Essentially, you'd have to pay 5 for a 4/4. And then you have this enchantment on the battlefield for good. So it seems pretty solid. I just don't know how effective it'll be, but I like that it comes with a body, so there's upside there. Next is Kithkin Billy Rider. We have a 3 mana 1/3 creature with double strike. So we usually see one of these in every set, and I think this one's going to be even better because of the amount of +1/+1 counters we have. So I could really see this growing, and the fact that it's a knight also just synergizes with white and blue a lot more, so I'm a really big fan of this card. After that, we have Phyrexian Censor, 3 mana 3/3 creature. Each player can't cast more than one non-Phyrexian spell each turn, and non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. So this is great for being aggressive if you're able to slow down your opponent for putting creatures out that can block. That's fantastic. But I think this card not only will be good in limited, but it'll be great in standard too, because you can really run out some solid Phyrexian decks out there. Next is Guardian of Girpur, 3 mana 3/3 creature with flying, and when it ETBs, you can flicker a creature artifact and return it at the beginning of your next end step. So you'll notice that there's tons of ETB effects in white, especially with other colors too. And so I think this card is going to be fantastic, and I have a flicker deck in my standard that I'm going to be throwing multiple copies of this in for sure. Next we have Attentive Skywarden, 3 mana 2/2 creature with flying, and when it deals combat damage to a player or battle, transform up to 1 target incubator token you control. So depending on how heavy you are on the incubators, this card could be really strong. I think the upside is really high, but if you don't have any, it's still a 2/2 flyer. So I think that's okay, and it's at common, so I think these are going to be highly selected. Next, you have Monastery Mentor, 3 mana 2/2 creature with prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 monk with prowess itself. So honestly, it's very similar to the Iconoblast or Iconoclast. I think it was the Iconoclast. The Izzet 2-drop. It's just easier to cast because it's not 2-color, and you can splash it. You can even play it with that if you wanted to create a standard deck with it. But in especially limited, you see these cards all the time, and they're always really effective. So I really like it. And that's our best 3-drop in white. For our 4-drops, we have Bola Slinger, 4 mana 2/2 creature with backup, and the effect is whenever this creature attacks, tap target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So you could technically play this and tap down a creature by putting a +1/+1 counter on another creature. So I think that's pretty solid. I'm not sure how effective that'll be, depending on how aggressive this format is, but it could be pretty good. Next is Knight of the New Coalition, 4 mana 2/2 creature with vigilance, and when ETBs, create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So basically you're getting 2 2/2s for 4, both with vigilance, so it's okay. It's obviously not very high power, but you're definitely going wide, so if that's what you're wanting to do, then that's good on its own. It also does put 2 knights on the battlefield, so the relevance is there too. Next is Tiller of Flesh, 4 mana 2/4 creature. Whenever you cast a spell that targets 1 or more permanents, incubate 2. So this has some upside, but I don't know how often this is going to trigger, so it seems for at least an uncommon, not as high power as you'd like it to be, but it still is both a Phyrexian and a knight. So next is Elash Norn, a 4 mana 3/5 legendary creature with vigilance. Whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. So that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty good rate, and this has a pretty good butt on it also, so it puts up a very solid block. Then it has 3 mana, sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile Elash Norn, and return it transformed. So when it transforms, it turns into the Argent Etchings. And it's a saga that at the first lore counter, it'll incubate 2 5 times, then transfer all of your incubator tokens. So essentially you get 5 2/2s minimum. And then next turn, you get creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike. So on its own right there, that's probably going to end the game. And then on top of that, it has destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. And then you exile this, and it returns your Elash Norn back to the battlefield, which is absolutely insane. It just depends. You have to be able to get there with the sacrificing 3 other creatures in the first place to be able to use it, so you're a little bit limited there. But face value, this is a very solid card on its own, so I really like Elash Norn. Next is Heliod the Radiant Dawn, a 4-mana 4/4 legendary enchantment creature, which is a god. So this is our first god we get to see. And then it ETBs return target enchantment card that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty solid because there are a couple enchantment removals, not just the aura that I'd mentioned before. And then it has Transform. So 3 and a blue Phyrexia mana will turn it into the Warped Eclipse, which is a 4/6 creature that you may cast spells as though they had flash, and then spells you cast cost 1 less for each card your opponent draws this turn. So honestly, you don't have to play anything on your turn. You can hold everything up, which is fantastic, and it seems pretty sweet. And I love the art. I love this idea of all these creatures getting Phyrexianized, so it seems pretty cool. Next is Archangel Elspeth, 4 mana Planeswalker with 4 loyalty, and its uptick for 1 is create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with vigilance, or with lifelink. And then the -2 is put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying, which is pretty solid. Turn any creature into a threat. And -6, return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that'll essentially, if you're running the right deck, win the game itself. So, and that's only going to take 2 turns to get to, which is pretty crazy. So they got to remove this guy right away. That's it for 4 drops. Onto our 5+ drops. We have the Alabaster Host Intercessor, which is a 6 mana 3/4 creature. When it ETBs, exile target creature an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield, and then it's got Plane Cycle, so you can discard it and search for planes and then reveal it and put it in your hand and shuffle. This card honestly is pretty good. The only thing that I don't like is it's a 3/4 for 6. The fact that it's a 6-cost creature is the only reason why I'm bumping this so low, because then you'll compare it to our next card, Golden Scale Aeronaut, 5 mana 2/3 creature with backup 1 and flying. So this creature is technically a 3/4 if you backed itself up. So that's not a great rate either, to be honest, comparatively to some other cards. And so the only thing that gives this a benefit is it's flexible and it can give another creature +1/+1 and flying for that turn. So I like that about it. So I don't know what would be worse between these two cards, but I think they're pretty on par. Next, we have Progenitor Exarch, which is an XX and 1 planes for a 1/2 creature. When it ETBs, incubate 3 X times. So however many X you pay, you get that many incubate 3s. So then you get the ability, you can transform with this creature any incubator token after the summoning sickness leaves. So I like the fact that you can play this down for 1 and then you can just transform any incubator token. I think that's the part that really is a great value for this card. Other than that, you could play this for, say, 3, and you get a 3/3 creature from the incubator, and it can also help you incubate other things. So the rate on this is pretty solid. It just depends on how important these incubator tokens are. So I think that's the only reason why it drops down on this list. Next is Knight Errant of Eos. So 5 mana 4/4 creature with Convoke. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that convoked it. Put the revealed cards into your hand, then shuffle. So a lot going on there. Essentially, if creatures tap to pay its cost, you may reveal up to 2 creatures with those mana costs in the top 6. So this will be great for those decks that really want 3 mana costs and under for their creatures, because you just tap 3 and then you can get 2 of those 3 and under in your top 6, which is really strong. But it does go in your hand, not on the battlefield, so keep that in mind. But it essentially draws you 2 cards. Next is Infected Defector. I had the 5 mana 4/3 creature. When it dies, incubate 3. So you get a 4/3 for 5, and then you get a 3/3 afterwards. But essentially, that's going to cost 7 in the end. I don't know if that rate is worth it, but it's not too bad. You get 2 bodies that are pretty solid, and it again is a Phyrexian Knight, so that's the relevance is there. After that, we have Essence of Orthodoxy, which is a 5-mana 3/3 creature with flying. When it or another Phyrexia enters a battlefield under your control, you get to incubate 2. So this, paired with the other rare, is fantastic. You can just drop this down, and you get incubate 2. And then if your deck is primarily Phyrexian, every creature you play is just going to add another body onto the field, or another artifact that can turn into a body on the field, which is absolutely insane. You can just continue to put the pressure on your opponent, and as long as they don't have a board wipe or something like that, then you get tons of value out of that. And even if they do have a board wipe, you might not be able to incubate all of these or transform all of these all at once. So even if they board wipe you, you can then transform something still that is an incubator token. So it's an interesting thing there, and late game, this is really going to allow you to use up that mana that you usually can't use in limited. So I really, really like it. The only thing that's better in it is basically a Baneslayer Angel in limited. So Boonbringer Valkyrie is a 5-mana 4/4 creature with backup 1. Flying, first strike, lifelink. The only thing it doesn't have is the protection that Baneslayer Angel had. But essentially, it can turn itself into a 5/5 flying first strike lifelink, or it can give something else +1/+1 flying first strike and lifelink until end of turn, which is insane. And then the +1/+1 counter obviously stays, but like that alone, just the effect of that is insane. And then you still have a 4/4 body with all of those still. So I think as soon as you grab this, you're just gonna want to stick in white, and this card's just gonna win you the game. We're all good with creatures now. We're going to move on to our interaction and removal. We have our worst at Inspired Charge, which is just the 4-mana instant that is your Anthem effect on your creatures. So creatures get +2/+1 till end of turn. So nothing crazy there. It's just pretty standard, but it could be really important with the fact that the incubator tokens are going to be pumping out and making you go wide. So I could see it having some effect. But back to Sunder the Gateway, the 2-mana sorcery. We're going to be focusing on the first part where it destroys target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls and incubate 2. So what I thought in this is it's not, again, going to have that many targets. It still incubates 2, but it has to destroy something to do that. So the nice thing is that it still has the side effect where it can incubate 2 on its own, but you got to just make sure that, if you're to use this, it's probably going to be in best of 3, so just having that on the sideboard would be okay. Next is Elspeth's Smite, which is a 1-mana instant, deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and if it would die, exile it. So that's pretty good. A 1-mana instant spell for white is going to be something really easy to hold up, and people are just going to have to try and avoid it. And who knows, if you have double strike or first strike, you can deal that damage to it, and then you can play this down and remove something a little bit bigger too still. So has a little bit of flexibility. Aerial Boost, a 2-mana instant with Convoke, and target creature can get +2/+2 and gain flying until end of turn. The nice thing about these Convoke cards, especially for instants, is you can tap down creatures you have on your battlefield after they blocked, and you can put a pump on your creature, or you can attack with vigilant creatures and then pump it as you're attacking, so put through some extra damage. So I think this Convoke is going to be really, really important, and it's going to be extremely cheap to pay for. You can just tap down 2 creatures and you don't have to pay anything for Aerial Boost at all. So that's pretty cool, and it's going to really make it hard to see if they even have something held up. The one thing is, I feel like maybe Arena might be giving it away if you're able to do that when all your mana's tapped down and you've got nothing else on the battlefield that has an ability. So hopefully it doesn't do that. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to have to start hitting control a lot more. So next is Scroll Shift, which is a 3-mana instant. It's a flicker a creature, enchantment, or artifact, and then you get to draw a card also. So you know how many ETB effects so far in white, and then you also get to draw a card on top of that, so it replaces it. So pretty decent rate there. Next is Angelic Intervention, a 2-mana instant. Target creature or planeswalker you control gains protection from colorless or color of your choice, If it's a creature, it gets +1/+1. So again, it synergizes with those +1/+1 stuff. It protects things. It may not protect enchantments, like it's not a non-land permanent, but it does protect planeswalkers, which is great. So I think that's relevant, depending on what you have in your limited pool. And it's pretty cheap, and you'll have it at common, so you should have maybe 1 or 2 of these. So it depends. I'm not sure how much you're going to need protection, but it at least is a decent rate for the card. Next is Surge of Salvation, a 1-mana instant, and this is going to be the better of the protection spells, where you and your permanents get hexproof until end of turn, and then you get to prevent damage from black and or red sources that deal to creatures you control this turn. So really good for dealing with those aggressive decks, the ones that punch you or kill your spells a lot. So this is going to be really good. It's gonna give hexproof to everything, so they can't target anything. So I just think for 1 mana, this is gonna be hard to avoid, especially if you're gonna be trying to put through that last bit of damage. Meanwhile, you might be, a little bit susceptible to, if they don't die, you die the next turn, those sort of things. So it's a hard thing to kind of plan for, but it's gonna be in the set, so everybody's gonna have to now. Next is Cut Short, a 3-mana instant with Convoke again, but this time it's destroy target planeswalker that has activated this turn, or a tapped creature. And what's really good about this is you can block with your creatures, and then tap those creatures for the Convoke cost, and then you basically have a free removal spell. So that's pretty insane. It just obviously depends on if you have creatures on the board. Next is Seal for Existence, a 3-mana enchantment with Ward 3, and then it's an exile target non-land permanent until it leaves the battlefield. So really, really good. We've seen these be effective in Limited before. The fact that it has Ward 3 is going to make it even harder to get rid of, so you can essentially expect it to stay exiled the whole time. Next we have Realm Breaker's Grasp, 2-mana enchantment aura. So this is the Planar Disrupt that doesn't have enchant planeswalkers, just artifacting creatures, and then it does prevent any activated abilities along with blocking them from attacking or blocking, so that's pretty good also, and it's only for 2. To our board wipe, which is Sunfall, a 5-mana exile all creatures, and then incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. So not only do you get to get rid of all the creatures, but you get 1 incubator token, but it's for X, so it gets that many +1/+1 counters. So you could get a big body from it. Either way, still very solid. Not at the rate of White Sun's Twilight from Phyrexia will be 1, but very. That's going to be it for the removal. We're just going to head into some other stuff that I've looked at. So I looked at all of the cards that were in white, including the multicolored cards. So the average converted mana cost is 3.34, which is the lowest out of all colors. So it's going to be an aggressive color. It's going to have a lot of early plays. It's also going to have, you can tell with the incubator tokens, the mid game is going to be fine. It's got a very good removal. With the board wipe at the end, that's going to help you deal with any bigger creatures if it goes too long. And then, like I mentioned, lots of ETB effects, so you're going to be wanting to make use of that to get as much value out of your cards as possible. So really excited for this color. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned. I'll be posting more videos in all of the colors, so you can check those out too. And then I'll be heading into posting drafts later on. So I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Feel free to comment down below on anything that you might change, because again, this is without playing with the cards. I want to hear you guys' feedback to see what you guys have to say too, and I'm excited to see how close this is with what actually happens in the set. So I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.